Hello, and welcome to the fifth and final lesson in this series. We're nearing the end of our itinerary on report creation in Sage Intelligence Reporting. In the last video, I started looking at pivot table reports, showed some of those that are available to you out of the box, and ran out one to explain how it works. I then began building one of my own from one of the existing containers in intelligence reporting. Now in this lesson, I'm going to continue working on it, making use of some of the other options available in the Report Manager. Once finished, I can then start constructing my dashboard from it. To remind you, the purpose of my dashboard is to help me better manage the performance of my sales staff. I've displayed the final design on screen again to show what we'll be working towards. Let's get going. In the last lesson, I talked about how every standard report makes use of a container that is created using the connector module. There are a few different ways to design one, and the method used will determine what tabs are available to you in the Report Manager. In most cases, the ones shown for my report will be there. To recap, these are the Properties, Columns, Filters, Parameters, Sort Fields, and Aggregate Filters tabs. I made mention of some of the settings under the Properties tab in the last video, and am now going to continue with the rest of them. They allow you to shape the raw data in a report. Although it's possible to transform data once in Excel using pivot tables and other features, these options act on the query that is executed against your database and can result in a faster and more compact report. The Columns tab lists the data fields that have been added to a report. These are the same ones I selected when I first created it. By dragging them up or down, or by using the buttons to the right, you can change the order that they will appear in your raw data. You can also use the Add and Remove buttons to amend them. I'm going to shift some of mine around so that they appear in a more logical order. Apart from defining and arranging your data set, the Columns tab also allows you to apply aggregate functions. These are used to summarize your data by doing things like summing or averaging the values in a column based on similar rows. For example, the sum function can be used to return the total sales for each sales rep. You can add one by right-clicking on a column, selecting Apply Aggregate, and then choosing the operation you want. I'm not going to add any to my report. Filters, as the name suggests, allows you to filter the data in your report. I'm going to explain how they work by adding one to mine. My report includes different types of invoices. These are normal invoices, credit memos, and deleted items. Deleted items won't add any significance to my dashboard, so I want to exclude them from my raw data. My invoice types are shown in the Invoice Type field, so I'm going to add a filter based on it. I can then choose a comparison operator. Since I want all my invoices that aren't deleted ones, I'm going to select Not Equal To. I then need to enter the value for my deleted ones. If you know this offhand, you can type it into the field. Otherwise, by clicking the ellipsis button, those present in the field will be shown. In my case, XD is the code for deleted invoices, so I'm going to select it. You can see the filter added to the window, and to summarize, it says Include all rows of data where the invoice type is not equal to XD. Another thing to mention, in case you didn't notice, is that my invoice type field wasn't one of those included in my columns. The software, however, still allowed me to filter by it, and should do for most, if not all, fields in a container. Parameters work the same as filters, but allow you to select the values you want to filter by at runtime. We've already seen examples of these in the previous videos and in the first series. Like with my out-of-the-box customer sales report, when this one is run, I would like to be able to select the range of invoices to be included based on their date. And similar to my filter, this will limit the number of rows in my report as well as make it specific to the time period I'm interested in viewing. In this case, I need to use two of them, one for the start date of the invoices and one for the end date. I'm going to add them based on the invoice date field, and for the first, use the greater than or equal to comparator. With parameters, you can enter a default value that will be populated in the parameter dialog when a report is run. You can also make use of system variables by clicking on the @ icon. These are placeholders for arguments that will be determined at runtime based on the time that a report is run or other circumstances. So, for example, if I want my date range to be for the current calendar month, I could use the month start and month end variables for the two parameters I'm setting up. Then, no matter which month I run my report in, that month's records will be included. I could also do this with filters. The difference here is that I'll still have the option to select different values at runtime if I want to. I'm not going to use any for mine, so I'm going to click OK. I'm going to continue adding the second one. This time using the less than or equal to comparator, and leave the value field blank again. My two parameters are complete, and you can see them in the tab. To summarize, they say include all rows where the invoice date is greater than or equal to the start date I select and less than or equal to the end date I select. Sort fields allow you to sort the raw data. This is done simply by adding the field you want to sort on to the tab. I'm going to sort mine also by my invoice date. By default, this is ascending order, but if you right-click on the field and select its properties, you can change this to descending. The last tab is the Aggregate Filters tab. Using it, you can filter your data based on the results of an aggregation. For example, you can add one that will return only sales reps whose total sales are above a certain amount. I don't need to add one to my report. I'm finished modifying my report using the options in the Report Manager. Something to point out is that each item you add in any of the tabs includes its own properties, which allow you to do further tweaking. You can access them by right-clicking on an item and selecting Properties from the context menu that appears. You can also find more information on these finer details in your Intelligence Reporting Help file. I'm now going to run out my report. You can see that as I do, the two parameters allowing me to restrict my data are shown, and I can make use of the date picker for them. I'm going to select the info for my current year so far. With my workbook open, I'm going to jump straight into creating my dashboard, starting with my first gauge to show my total sales by region. I can now make use of Excel's pivot table and chart functionality. To add the component, I can click anywhere in the raw data and then from the Insert tab select Pivot Chart. In the Setup dialog, you can see that under Table or Range, Excel automatically selects the entire data set. The way it is referenced, though, is a problem because it isn't dynamic. So if I keep it like this and run my report out again with a different amount of data, my pivot chart will still use this selection and then either have data missing or show blank rows. To get around this, when a report is run out, Sage Intelligence cleverly creates a number of named ranges for the information. Included is one for each data column and one for the entire table called Raw Data. You can show them by selecting the Table Range field and pressing F3 on your keyboard. Now, by using raw data, regardless of how the rows change, any pivot table or chart you create will always look at the entire set. I'm going to select it and click OK. I'm also going to have the chart placed on a new sheet. You can see that when this is done, a pivot table is automatically added as well, and the next step is to set it up with the right fields. As this is done, the chart will automatically update to reflect it. Another thing to point out is that the new sheet has been placed first in the list. I'm going to drag it to the end. This is important because if it was left where it was, the template saved, and the report run out again, the raw data will be placed in it and will cause problems depending on what's in it. In other words, when the raw data and parameter info is added to the workbook, the sheets are treated based on their order and not on their names, so it's always a good idea to check this. I'm going to add my division, description, and extension amount fields to the pivot table, which will give my total sales by region. For this information, I'd prefer the look of a bar chart, so I'm going to change the chart type. I'm also going to sort the table so that the sales of my dial always appear in decreasing order. The last thing I'm going to do is move the chart to its own worksheet. This is because, in keeping with the principle of simplicity, I don't want to clutter my dashboard by including the pivot tables in it as well. I can now move on to my next indicator, which is my top 3 performing sales staff. Instead of adding another chart from scratch, I'm simply going to make a copy of the pivot table I already have, edit the fields, and then add the chart at the end. I want to keep the information together, so I'm going to paste it in the same sheet to the right of the original one. When working with multiple pivot tables in one sheet, it's important to place them side by side. This is because they aren't allowed to overlap, which could happen if positioned below one another and new rows are added to them. I'm going to swap out my regions with my sales reps and then filter it using a top 10 filter to only show the top 3 performers. I can then add the chart for it. In this case, I like the look of a donut type. To end off, I'm going to add it to my dashboard sheet and position it below the first one. For my last dial, I'm going to use the same pivot table again. This time, once copied, all I need to do is change the filter to show my bottom 3 performers. I'm going to use the same chart type for it and then place it to the right of the previous dial on my dashboard sheet. The next item to add is my commission calculator. I'm going to use a pivot table for this and place it directly in my dashboard. So I'm going to go back to my raw data and add a new one from scratch. I'm going to make use of the raw data named range again. And this time, select to place it on my dashboard sheet and position it in the leftover space at the top right. I don't mind that it's above the chart because I don't have that many sales reps, and so it won't overlap. Pivot tables also don't clash with charts like they do with other pivot tables. Like with the last 2 components, I need my salesperson names and extension amount fields, and so I'm going to add them as well. To work out the commission, I'm going to use a calculated field which is accessed from the Analyze tab on the ribbon. My structure works in that if a salesperson reaches a target of $60,000 in a year, they receive 2% of their total sales amount, and I can enter this using a normal Excel if function. You can see that 2 of my staff have already achieved theirs. To tidy up my table, I'm going to give each column a more suitable name. The last item to add is my timeline, which for now I'm going to base off my table. Once set up, it will allow me to filter my entire dashboard by a particular month or range of months. The feature is also found on the Analyze tab. And I'm going to position the gadget to the right of my existing components. You can see that as I select a particular month, the data in my table changes. Connecting it to the rest of the items is easy. All I have to do is select it, and then under the Options tab, click on Report Connections. The rest of the pivot tables in my workbook are shown, and I can link the ones I want to it. Now, when I select a particular month, all the items change. I've finished adding the different components to my dashboard, and now, with a bit of Excel finesse, I can get it looking the way I want. Like with my financial one, I'm not going to go through this, but I'm going to jump ahead and show the finished version. And although I've already alluded to it, just be sure with pivot table reports, like with the Report Designer, in order for your changes to persist, you need to save the workbook back to the report in the Report Manager using Save Excel template. We're coming to the end of this series, and before drawing to a close, I'd like to give a summary of all we've seen so far. My intention throughout these 5 videos has been to give you an idea of the report creation capabilities in Sage Intelligence. Following on from the first series, I kept the focus on the Report Designer and took a closer look at its 2 primary features, the Layout Generator and the Task Pane. In the first lesson, I demonstrated how, through the use of row sets and its intuitive design, the Layout Generator allows you to easily whip up standard layouts that can be reused. In the next lesson, I moved on to the Task Pane and showed how, through its simple drag and drop functionality, in combination with Excel features, you are given greater command over your layout design, with the ability to customize existing ones and come up with more specialized ones of your own. The goal of all of this was to take the work done, together with information from an existing report and layout, and show how it could be combined to give a holistic view of your financials, which I covered in the 3rd lesson. This also provided an introduction to financial ratios and dashboarding in the Designer. I then moved on to another method of designing reports, which is through Excel pivot tables and charts. In the 4th lesson, I provided an introduction to this by looking at some of those usually provided out of the box in intelligence reporting and running one out to take a closer look. I then showed how you can add your own based on the standard containers that are available, and in transitioning to this last video, discussed some of the options at your disposal in the Report Manager to further tailor your report. I now had the necessary data present in Excel and could start using pivot tables and charts to put together my operational dashboard. This was to give me a better understanding of the performance of the sales staff in my business. Although I've covered a lot and provided a number of examples that you could use yourself, the reports and dashboards you choose to create are really dependent on your company, the data you have, and the information you would like to see. So if anything, I hope that I've sparked your imagination as to what is possible, what could work for you, and how to get there, to give you greater insight into your business, make the running of it smoother, and give you back time for the things you love. Until the next chapter in your reporting journey, I wish you all the best. Goodbye.